Section 2 of the Satyricon. This is a Librivox recording. All Librivox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit librivox.org. The Satyricon by Gaius Petronius Arbiter, translated by W.C. Firebaugh. Section 2. The Satyricon of Petronius Arbiter, Volume 1. Chapter the 11th. After having had the whole town under my eyes, I returned to the little room, and having claimed the kisses which were mine in good faith, I encircled the boy in the closest of embraces, and enjoyed the effect of our happy vows to a point that might be envied. Nor had all the ceremonies been completed, when Ascyltos stole stealthily up to the outside of the door, and, violently wrenching off the bars, burst in upon me, toying with my brother. He filled the little room with his laughter and hand-clapping, pulled away the cloak which covered us. "What are you up to now, most sanctimonious brother?" he jeered. "What's going on here? A blanket wedding?" Nor did he confine himself to words, but pulling the strap off his bag, he began to lash me very thoroughly, interjecting sarcasms the while. "This is the way you would share with your comrade, is it?" The unexpectedness of the thing compelled me to endure the blows in silence and to put up with the abuse. So I smiled at my calamity, and very prudently too, as otherwise I should have been put to the necessity of fighting with a rival. My pretended good humour soothed his anger, and at last Ascyltos smiled as well. "See here, Encolpius," he said, "are you so engrossed with your debaucheries that you do not realize our money is gone, and that what we have left is of no value? In the summer, times are bad in the city. The country is luckier. Let's go and visit our friends." Necessity compelled the approval of this plan, and the repression of any sense of injury as well. So, loading Giton with our packs, we left the city and hastened to the country seat of Lycurgus, a Roman knight. Inasmuch as Ascyltos has formerly served him in the capacity of brother, he received us royally, and the company there assembled rendering our stay still more delightful. In the first place there was Tryphena, a most beautiful woman, who had come in company with Lycus, the master of a vessel and owner of estates near the seashore. Although Lycurgus kept a frugal table, the pleasures we enjoyed in this most enchanting spot cannot be described in words. Of course, you know that Venus joined us all up as quickly as possible. The lovely Tryphena pleased my taste, and listened willingly to my vows, but hardly had I time to enjoy her favours, when Lycus, in a towering rage because his preserves had been secretly invaded, demanded that I indemnify him in her stead. She was an old flame of his, so he broached the subject of a mutual exchange of favours. Burning with lust, he pressed his suit, but Tryphena possessed my heart, and I said Lycus nay. By refusal, however, he was only made more ardent, followed me everywhere, entered my room at night, and after his entreaties had been met with contempt, he had recourse to violence against me, at which I yelled so lustily that I aroused the entire household, and, by the help of Lycurgus, I was delivered from the troublesome assault and escaped. At last, perceiving that the house of Lycurgus was not suitable to the prosecution of his design, he attempted to persuade me to seek his hospitality, and when his suggestion was refused, he made use of Tryphena's influence over me. She besought me to comply with Lycus' desires, and she did this all the more readily as by that she hoped to gain more liberty of action. With affairs in this posture, I follow my love. But Lycurgus, who had renewed his old relations with Ascyltos, would not permit him to leave, so it was decided that he should remain with Lycurgus, but that we would accompany Lycus. Nevertheless, we had it understood among ourselves that whenever the opportunity presented itself, we would each pilfer whatever we could lay hands upon for the betterment of the common stock. Lycus was highly delighted with my acceptance of his invitation and hastened our departure. So, bidding our friends good-bye, we arrived at his place on the very same day. Lycus had so arranged matters that on the journey he sat beside me, while Tryphena was next to Giton, the reason for this being his knowledge of the woman's notorious inconstancy. Nor was he deceived, for she immediately fell in love with the boy, and I easily perceived it. In addition, Lycus took the trouble of calling my attention to the situation, and laid stress upon the truth of what we saw. On this account I received his advances more graciously, at which he was overjoyed. He was certain that contempt would be engendered from the inconstancy of my sister, with the result that, being piqued at Tryphena, I would all the more freely receive his advances. Now, this was the state of affairs at the house of Lycus. Tryphena was desperately in love with Giton. Giton's whole soul was aflame for her. Neither of them was a pleasing sight to my eyes, and Lycus, studying to please me, arranged novel entertainments each day, which Doris, his lovely wife, seconded to the best of her ability, and so gracefully that she soon expelled Tryphena from my heart. A wink of the eye acquainted Doris of my passion. A coquettish glance informed me of the state of her heart, and this silent language, anticipating the office of the tongue, secretly expressed that longing of our souls which we had both experienced at the same instant. The jealousy of Lycus, already well known to me, was the cause of my silence. But love itself revealed to the wife the designs which Lycus had upon me. At our first opportunity of exchanging confidences, she revealed to me what she had discovered, and I candidly confessed, telling her of the coldness with which I had always met his advances. The far-sighted woman remarked that it would be necessary for us to use our wits. It turned out that her advice was sound, for I soon found out that complacency to the one meant possession of the other. Giton, in the meantime, was recruiting his exhausted strength, and Tryphena turned her attention to me, but meeting with a repulse, she flounced out in a rage. The next thing this burning harlot did was to discover my commerce with both husband and wife. As for his wantonness with me, she flung that aside, as by it she lost nothing, but she fell upon the secret gratifications of Doris and made them known to Lycus, who, his jealousy proving stronger than his lust, took steps to get revenge. Doris, however, forewarned by Tryphena's maid, looked out for squalls and held aloof from any secret assignations. When I became aware of all this, I heartily cursed the perfidy of Tryphena and the ungrateful soul of Lycus, and made up my mind to be gone. Fortune favoured me, for a vessel sacred to Isis and laden with prize money had, only the day before, run upon the rocks in the vicinity. After holding a consultation with Giton, at which he gladly gave consent to my plan, as Tryphena visibly neglected him after having sapped his virility, we hastened to the seashore early on the following morning, and boarded the wreck, a thing easy of accomplishment, as the watchmen, who were in the pay of Lycus, knew us well. But they were so attentive to us that there was no opportunity of stealing a thing until, Having left Giton with them, I craftily slipped out of sight, and sneaked aft where the statue of Isis stood, and despoiled it of a valuable mantle and a silver sistrum. From the master's cabin I also pilfered other valuable trifles, and stealthily sliding down a rope, went ashore. Giton was the only one who saw me, and he evaded the watchmen and slipped away after me. I showed him the plunder when he joined me, and we decided to post with all speed to Ascyltos, but we did not arrive at the home of Lycurgus until the following day. In a few words I told Ascyltos of the robbery when he joined us, and of our unfortunate love affairs as well. He was for prepossessing the mind of Lycurgus in our favour, naming the increasing wantonness of Lycus as the cause of our secret and sudden change of habitation. When Lycurgus had heard everything, he swore that he would always be a tower of strength between us and our enemies. Until Tryphena and Doris were awake and out of bed, our flight remained undiscovered, for we paid them the homage of a daily attendance at the morning toilette. When our unwonted absence was noted, Lycus sent out runners to comb the seashore, for he suspected that we had been to the wreck, but he was still unaware of the robbery, which was as yet unknown, because the stern of the wreck was lying away from the beach, and the master had not, as yet, gone back aboard. Lycus flew into a towering rage when our flight was established for certain, and railed bitterly at Doris, whom he considered as the moving factor in it. Of the hard words and the beating he gave her I will say nothing, for the particulars are not known to me, but I will affirm that Tryphena, who was the sole cause of the unpleasantness, persuaded Lycus to hunt for his fugitives in the house of Lycurgus, which was our most probable sanctuary. She volunteered to accompany him in person, so that she could load us with the abuse which we deserved at her hands. They set out on the following day, and arrived at the estate of Lycurgus, but we were not there, for he had taken us to a neighbouring town to attend the feast of Hercules, which was there being celebrated. As soon as they found out about this, they hastened to take to the road, and ran right into us in the portico of the temple. At sight of them we were greatly put out, and Lycus held forth violently to Lycurgus upon the subject of our flight, but he was met with raised eyebrows and such a scowling forehead that I plucked up courage, and in a loud voice passed judgment upon his lewd and base attempts and assault upon me, not in the house of Lycurgus alone, but even under his own roof. And as for the meddling Tryphena, she deserved her just deserts, for at great length I described her moral turpitude to the crowd. Our altercation had caused a mob to collect, and, to give weight to my argument, I pointed to limber-hamed Giton, drained dry, as it were, and to myself, reduced almost to skin and bones by the raging lust of that nymphomaniac harlot. So humiliated were our enemies by the guffaws of the mob, that in gloomy ill humour they beat a retreat to plot revenge. As they perceived that we had prepossessed the mind of Lycurgus in our favour, they decided to await his return at his estate, in order that they might wean him away from his misapprehension. As the solemnities did not draw to a close until late at night, we could not reach Lycurgus's country place, so he conducted us to a villa of his, situated near the halfway point of the journey, and leaving us to sleep there until the next day, he set off for his estate for the purpose of transacting some business. Upon his arrival, he found Lycus and Tryphena awaiting him, and they stated their case so diplomatically that they prevailed upon him to deliver us into their hands. Lycurgus, cruel by nature and incapable of keeping his word, was by this time striving to hit upon the best method of betraying us, and to that end he persuaded Lycus to go for help, while he himself returned to the villa and had us put under guard. To the villa he came and greeted us with a scowl as black as any Lycus himself had ever achieved. Clenching his fists again and again, he charged us with having lied about Lycus, and turning Ascyltos out, he gave orders that we were to be kept confined to the room in which we had retired to rest, nor would he hear a word in our defence from Ascyltos, but, taking the latter with him, he returned to his estate, reiterating his orders relative to our confinement, which was to last until his return. On the way back, Ascyltos vainly essayed to break down Lycurgus's determination, but neither prayers nor caresses, nor even tears could move him. Thereupon my brother conceived the design of freeing us from our chains, and, antagonized by the stubbornness of Lycurgus, he positively refused to sleep with him, and through this he was in a better position to carry out the plan which he had thought out. When the entire household was buried in its first sleep, Ascyltos loaded our little packs upon his back and slipped out through a breach in the wall, which he had previously noted, arriving at the villa with the dawn. He gained entrance without opposition and found his way to our room, which the guards had taken the precaution to bar. It was easy to force an entrance, as the fastening was made of wood, which same he pried off with a piece of iron. The fall of the lock roused us, for we were snoring away, in spite of our unfortunate situation. On account of the long vigil, the guard was in such a deep sleep that we alone were wakened by the crashing fall of the lock, and Ascyltos, coming in, told us in a few words what he had done for us. But as far as that goes, not many were necessary. We were hurriedly dressing when I was seized with the notion of killing the guard and stripping the place. This plan I confided to Ascyltos, who approved of the looting, but pointed out a more desirable solution without bloodshed. Knowing all the crooks and turns as he did, he led us to a storeroom, which he opened. We gathered up all that was of value and sallied forth while it was yet early in the morning. Shunning the public roads, we could not rest until we believed ourselves safe from pursuit. Ascyltos, when he had caught his breath, gloatingly exulted of the pleasure which the looting of a villa belonging to Lycurgus, a superlatively avaricious man, afforded him. He complained with justice of his parsimony, affirming that he himself had received no reward for his knightly services, that he had been kept at a dry table and on a skimpy ration of food. This Lycurgus was so stingy that he denied himself even the necessities of life, his immense wealth to the contrary notwithstanding. The tortured Tantalus still stands, to parch in his shifting pool, and starve when fruit sways just beyond his grasp, the image of the miser rich, when his avaricious soul robs him of food and drink in plenty's clasp. Ascyltos was for going to Naples that same day, but I protested the imprudence of going to any place where they would be on the lookout for us. Let's absent ourselves for a while and travel in the country. We are well supplied with means. This advice took his fancy, and we set out for a part of the country noted for the beauty of its estates, and where not a few of our acquaintances were enjoying the sports of the season. Scarcely had we covered half the distance, however, before it began to pour down rain by the bucketful, compelling us to run for the nearest village. Upon entering the inn, we noticed many other wayfarers who had put up there to escape the storm. The jam prevented our being watched, and at the same time made it easier for us to pry about with curious eyes. on the alert for something to appropriate. Ascyltos, unseen by anyone, picked up off the ground a little pouch in which he found some gold pieces. We were overjoyed with this auspicious beginning, but fearing that someone would miss the gold, we stealthily slipped out by the back door. A slave, who was saddling a horse in the courtyard, suddenly left his work and went into the house, as if he had forgotten something, and while he was gone, I appropriated a superb mantle which was tied fast to the saddle. By untying the thongs, then utilizing a row of outbuildings for cover, we made off into the nearest wood. When we had reached the depths of the grove, where we were in safety, we thoroughly discussed the surest method of secreting our gold, so that we would neither be accused of robbery nor robbed ourselves, and we finally decided to sew it into the hem of a ragged tunic which I threw over my shoulders, after having turned the mantle over to Ascyltos for safe keeping. We then made ready to start for the city via the unfrequented roads. We were about to emerge from the shelter of the wood when we heard from somewhere on our left, "They can't get away, they came into this wood, let's spread out and beat, and they will easily be caught." On hearing this, we were thrown into such a terrible fright that Ascyltos and Giton dashed away cityward through the underbrush, and I retreated in such a hurry that the precious tunic slipped off my shoulders without my knowing it. At last, completely fagged out and unable to take another step, I lay down under a tree, and there I first became aware of the loss of the tunic. Chagrin restored my strength, and I leapt to my feet to look for the treasure, and for a long time I beat around in vain. Worn out with work and vexation, I forced my way into the thickest part of the grove, and remained there for 4 mortal hours, but at last, bored to extinction by the horrible solitude, I sought a way out. As I went ahead, I caught sight of a peasant. Then I had need of all my nerve, and it did not fail me. Marching boldly up to him, I asked my way to the city, complaining that I had been lost in the wood for several hours. Seeing my condition, he took pity upon me, for I was covered in mud and paler than death, and asked me whether I had seen anyone in the place. "Not a soul," I replied, whereupon he kindly conducted me to the high road, where he met 2 of his companions, who informed him that they had beaten along every path in the forest, without having found anything except a tunic, which they showed him. As may be readily supposed, I did not have the audacity to claim it, though well aware of its value, and my chagrin became almost insupportable as I vented many a groaning curse over my lost treasure. The peasants paid no attention to me, and I was gradually left behind. As my weakness increased, my pace decreased. For this reason it was late when I reached the city, and entering the inn beheld Ascyltos, stretched out half dead upon a cot. Too far gone to utter a single syllable, I threw myself upon another. Ascyltos became greatly excited at not seeing the tunic which he had entrusted to me, demanding it insistently, but I was so weak that my voice refused its office, and I permitted the apathy of my eyes to answer his demand. Then, by and by, regaining my strength little by little, I related the whole affair to Ascyltos in every detail. He thought that I was joking, and although my testimony was fortified by a copious flood of tears, it could easily be seen that he remained unconvinced, believing that I wanted to cheat him out of the gold. Giton, who was standing by during all this, was as downcast as myself, and the suffering of the lad only served to increase my own vexation. But the thing which bothered me most of all was the painstaking search which was being made for us. I told Ascyltos of this, but he only laughed it off, as he had so happily extricated himself from the scrape. He was convinced that as we were unknown, and as no one had seen us, we were perfectly safe. We decided, nevertheless, to feign sickness, and to keep to our room as long as possible. But, before we knew it, our money ran out, and spurred by necessity, we were forced to go abroad and sell some of our plunder. End of section 2.